this side. Okay. Hello, welcome, good morning to yet another episode of Redstone, Lapis, Lazuli. It is I, your host, Pogo Kiddo. And here we go. Oh, man. Okay, let's see. Watch it crash. So you can see it for a second, right? You see it for a second, and then it's gone. Java! What it is that I'm using a mod that lets me do full screen windowed mode, and that's not native in Java Minecraft. You can't have full screen native, full screen borderless window natively in Java Minecraft. So that means if I tab out to something else, then it crashes, and I tab out all the time to go access my other stuff. So yes, check it out. We're down in it. We are down in it. I was up above it, and now I'm down in it. So yeah, this is a pool of lava at the very bottom of my world. Ooh, it's really pretty with the lights. I really like the lights. The mod I'm using is Rethinking Voxel's 18D, beta 18D. So the guy is the author of the mod of the shader pack is working on the next version of it, but it's pretty heavy. It's not optimized, and as you know, OBS eats like half my frames. So OBS is the software I use to broadcast, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, like, the fact that I can even broadcast is amazing. That's amazing. What a world we live in. We live in the future where random people can broadcast across the world. Like, that's pretty cool, man. Remember in the movie Back to the Future, when Marty McFly goes back to 1950s with his 1980s video camera, and Doc Brown was like amazed that you had a recording studio in the palm of your hand, like that was amazing to him. Well, now not only do we have a recording studio, we have a broadcasting studio. We can broadcast across the world now. Pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. Yeah. Of course, you know. So, happy Mother's Day, first of all. I have to call my mom this morning. It's kind of early, though. Happy Mother's Day. Eh? Happy Mother's Day. Yeah. So, Mother's Day. Like, I'm very fortunate to still have my mom around, and my mom is fantastic. My mom's great. Like, I don't know. I feel bad for people who don't have good relationships with their moms, because, yeah, mom is fantastic. Like, I don't know how I'd get through my world life. How would I get through life without mom? Like, it's gonna happen one day, right? I'm gonna have to take care of it myself. Like, or not take care of it myself, because that's what I'm doing now, but like I'm gonna lose a major aspect of support. Like, that's I talk to my mom all the time. No one knows me as well as my mom does, and even like, because I talk to her all the time. So yeah, so this is you know, going out to all the moms. Good job, moms. You work hard. What's that saying that was in The Crow? Mother is the name of God on the lips of children. Yep. So, yeah, I appreciate everything that mom has done for me. I recognize the labor that moms do to create good human beings, because human beings aren't like just born. I mean, they're born, right? They're born, but like, but you're not like, you're not quite there. I mean, like, humans need to be socialized. Like, that's the aspect people don't understand, is that humans just aren't born. They have to be created. They have to be made, and they're made through socialization, through the process of being socialized. Like, because there is no such thing as the individual. If all you had was an individual born and that's it, that individual will have no language, no culture, no idea how to interact with other humans, no idea how to interact with the world. They would be based, there's been examples of children, feral children, who were like deprived of social interaction by evil people. They were locked into like a container or something, or in a cage for like the very important developmental periods of their lives, and like they could never ever adapt to being like a normal or a regular person, because during that very important formative time they were deprived of everything. And so like there's a window. Humans have a window in which they're able to learn the most about what's going on in their life or in their world, where they're like a sponge and they absorb everything. And if you miss that window, like, you can never get it back. You can never get it back. So, like, the process of socialization is very important, and moms are a major component of that socialization. You get a lot of your initial values and understanding of reality from your mom. I mean, yeah, moms are very important. And like, pretty much moms like carry the world right now. Like, a lot of times dudes will impregnate a woman and then take off, or it just won't work out. But the thing is, dads can just walk away and go somewhere else and live their life. Moms are like stuck carrying the consequences a lot of times. So a lot of the world is very dependent upon the work of mothers. So I appreciate I appreciate all moms. I'm sorry if, I understand, or I don't understand it, but I can appreciate the absence of people who have lost their moms. So yeah, happy Mother's Day. Wow, okay. So let's get into it, huh? My last show, I was really hard on Joe Biden. Nah, because Joe Biden gave cover to Proud Boys, basically Proud Boys, to come attack the anti-genocide protesters on the campus, and then the Democratic establishment joined Joe Biden. Most of the Democratic establishment joined Joe Biden in his attack against the anti-genocide protesters. So that gave cover to literal fascists to come attack the anti-genocide protesters. And I showed you videos of how racists and Nazis came to attack the anti-genocide protesters. And so I was like, hey, Joe Biden, if this is saying an error. I want to make sure I'm still streaming. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain a smooth streaming. Yeah, dude, I can't help it. Like, Comcast, right? Like, it's supposed to be limited to 1500, and now it's at 2300 kilobits. I don't understand why. Why are you doing this, dude? Why did you change? But yeah, maybe I should stop for a second. Well, this sucks. Anyways, dude, did you just here setting? I can't even look at the settings right now. Oh yeah, I can. Video. Oh, I'm running output. That's what I'm doing. Output. It's at 1500. I don't or 15,000. I don't understand why it's up there to 23. The little window, little preview window looks good. So it's still going. Anyway. So yeah. What was I saying? Joe Biden gave cover to the fascists to attack the anti-genocide protesters. And I say it's anti-genocide, not pro-Palestinian, because it's not really, I mean, it's about the Palestinian people, of course, but understand what's happening to the Palestinian people is a genocide. It's a genocide perpetuated by Israel. So really, it's an anti-genocide protest. It's not like, oh, we love the I mean, like, yeah, we do love the Palestinian people. But we're not doing it just for the Palestinian people. We're doing it for the human right of not being genocided. That's like the principle. That's the principle of it, is genocide is wrong. So... And that's the thing. Joe Biden understands that apartheid is wrong. He's evil. It's evil. He understands this intuitively. Not intuitively, but he understands it. Like, he gave a big fat speech about it back in the 80s when he was a senator. And he was condemning South Africa for its apartheid.
That you adhere to, and then and I will go over them in a moment. Then you say on page 14, we must not become part of South Africa's problem. We must remain part of their solution. We must not aim to impose ourselves, our solutions, our favorites in South Africa.
Isn't that what's going on right now? Isn't that what Joe Biden's saying? Oh yeah, we can't impose our solutions. We can't impose our values on Israel. That's exactly what Joe Biden's saying right now. It's so funny. He is the thing that he railed against back in the 80s.
We have favorites in South Africa. The favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that...
Yeah, we have favorites in Palestine. The people, our favorites are the people who are being repressed. The people being bombed with U.S. weapons. That's who our favorites are. So Joe Biden in the 80s understood why Israel was so bad. Maybe not, right? Because it was still going on in the 80s.
Ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans. And the South Africans are majority black, and they are being excoriated. It is not to some stupid puppet government over there. It is not to the Afrikaner regime. We have no loyalty to them. We have no loyalty to South Africa.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, who's the puppet government? Like, remember when Joe Biden said weeks, not months? And Bibi Netanyahu was like, yeah, whatever, Biden, shut up. Give me the weapons. And Biden's like, okay, here you go. And Joe Biden makes all these noises like, oh, I'm seriously reconsidering my support. Like, I'm not so sure anymore. But that's bullshit, right? He's got to keep giving weapons to Israel. So, where are Joe Biden's loyalties? Are they with America? Are they with the repressed people of the world? Or are they with the genociders?
South Africans. And the fact of the matter is, I listen to this rationale first of all. It is the leaders of South Africa and their people, black and white, who have the majority responsibility.
It is the leaders of Israel and the Palestinians who have the majority of the responsibility. Isn't that, like, basically, his own words are ripping him apart. Joe Biden's own words are ripping him apart. Because you can say the same thing. Oh yeah, it's not up to the United States to get involved between what's going on with the Palestinian people and the state of Israel. which is bullshit. Israel's occupying Palestine. Israel's the occupier. Israel's the one with all the power. They want to say Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Dude, when's the last time they had an election in Palestine? In 2009. Do you think Hamas cares much about democracy? That's like saying, oh, we can't get involved with Russia because they're a democracy. Bullshit. Russia's not a democracy. Hamas doesn't care about democracy. It's stupid. Joe Biden is basically doing all the things he said were wrong back in the 80s.
They must rise to it. Well, they are rising to it. They're rising to it. The only thing left available with that repulsive, repugnant regime of Afrikaners there. And it's the only way they have. They've tried everything for the last 20 years. They begged, they borrowed, they crawled, and now they're taking up arms. Right?
All you gotta do is replace Afrikaners with Israelis. The Palestinian people have done everything. They begged, they borrowed, they stole, they did everything. And they still can't get it. The United States keeps vetoing their admission into the UN to recognize a state. Because the United States says the only way that a Palestinian state can emerge is through Israel, the occupiers. You mean the people genociding them right now? They have to deal with the people genociding them in order to get a state? That seems kind of ass backwards. He didn't say that back in the 80s. Why didn't he tell the black South Africans? Why didn't he tell them, oh, the only way you can get a state is if you work with the white majority who's occupying you? Why didn't he say that back then? What changed? What's the difference? Why is it suddenly Joe Biden's okay with forcing the oppressed people to work with their oppressors? To beg them for a state? Why is he okay now, but he wasn't okay with it in the 80s? Apartheid is apartheid, guys. It's the same thing.
The second thing, progress toward peace requires a timetable. Timetable, elimination of apartheid. What's our timetable? What are we saying to that repugnant regime? Are we saying you've got 20 days, 20 months, 20 years? We asked.
Remember what Joe Biden said? You have weeks, not months. And Bibi Netanyahu was like, shut up, Biden. And here we are, what, 7 months later? And Joe Biden did not stop the flow of arms. He threatened to, but he never did. Israel still invaded Rafah. Israel's still killing kids all over the place. Israel's still killing innocent people because the goal of Israel is genocide. They want to ethnically cleanse the land of Gaza so they can take it over themselves. It's not like I'm not making this up. I'll show you the video.
Them to put up a timetable. What's our timetable? These people are being crushed. And we're sitting here with the same kind of rhetoric. The same thing we heard. We heard go slow. We heard we have to take care of the problem afterwards. We heard we can't impose.
You are totally misconstruing the testimony that I gave.
Read first.
Furthermore, Senator, let me say that I hate to hear a senator of the United States calling for violence.
I'm not calling for violence.
That's what you're doing.
I hate to hear.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Do you hear that? That's what Joe Biden has basically done by calling the anti-genocide protesters anti-Semites for protesting against genocide. He's basically calling for violence against them. And that's what happened. The police were unleashed against them. Proud Boys were unleashed against them. I'm trying to find other stuff that I just thought of. Yeah, keep going.
I hate to hear an administration and a Secretary of State refusing to act on a morally abhorrent point. I hate to hear this country. I'm ashamed that this country puts out a policy like this that says nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, anyways. I just saw it, and I was looking at it going like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, here. So look at what the goal. So the Israelis are not interested in securing a peace. The Israelis are interested in stealing the land.
בהחלט צריך לעודד הגירה, כמה שפחות יהיה לחץ ברצועת עזה של גורמים שנכון, הם לא, אולי בלתי מעורבים עכשיו, אבל הם לא אוהבי ישראל, הם מחנכים את הילדים שלהם לטרור. הייתי רוצה, והיינו רוצים לראות, ודיברנו על זה בישיבות ממשלה. זה לא אגב, אין מדינות שרוצות לקלוט אותם, אף אחד לא רוצה, גם אם נשלם להם הרבה מאוד כסף. הגירה מרצון זה דבר חשוב, אין בו שום פגיעה בזכויות אדם, וגם המלחמה הזאת צריכה להימשך, וכשהיא נמשכת זה גורם...
אז למרות מה שאנחנו שומעים בו, אתה אומר, כן לעודד הגירה מרצון, כן זה הפתרון.
לעודד הגירה מרצון, וגם כופין אותו עד שיאמר רוצה אני.
איך?
המלחמה עושה את שלה.
כלומר, להמשיך לדחוק אותם בכוח,
אנחנו דוחקים עכשיו את החמאס לפינה, לא בתנאים קשים, אנחנו כן נותנים סיוע הומניטרי לבלתי...
You guys block. Israel's been blocking the humanitarian aid that goes into Gaza. Remember, Israel leveled false allegations against the UN aid agency, and then the United States just bought whatever Israel said and then cut funding. The aid agency that helped keep Palestinians alive by feeding them. So Israel is not interested in helping the Palestinian people. What Israel is interested in is making the conditions so bad that they voluntarily leave. That's what exactly their stated purpose is. To use the war to make it so bad that the Palestinian people leave the land, abandon the land, and then Israel can take it over. Just like what happened in the Nakba, like 75 years ago, when a bunch of Zionists attacked the Palestinian people and forced them to flee and then stole their homes.
תנאים קשים שם, צריך להגיד.
תנאים קשים נכון, והם ימשיכו להיות קשים כל עוד לא נחזיר את החטופים הביתה וכל עוד לא נשמיד את החמאס.
So remember, they're not interested, the Israelis are not interested in peace. They're not interested in securing the hostages. They're interested in stealing the land. And Joe Biden is right there with them. Why is Joe Biden right there with them? Why is Joe Biden doing that? Remember, Joe Biden is part of that crazy cult called Zionism. It's a crazy cult that says 3,000 years ago, we have a story where we have a deity that made a real estate deal with this ancient group of people. And in the meantime, thousands of years later, other people have lived on that land for way longer than the ancient Israelis. But we're going to discount that because we have the story that says this land is ours. We're allowed to kill everyone that's on quote, quote, our land. Joe Biden believes in this. He's a Zionist. Listen.
I get criticized for having said a long time ago, you need not be a Jew to be a Zionist. I'm a Zionist. Were there no Israel, there's not a Jew in the world to be safe.
Wow, if there was no Israel, there would not a Jew in the world would be safe. Why does he say that? Oh, look, here's a Jew being arrested by the American police, getting attacked. Joe Biden's right. He's making sure that the United States is not safe for Jews. He's like, because I make sure the United States, that's Annalise Orlek, professor of Jewish studies at Dartmouth College, being arrested by the police. Right? So that's an example of Jews not being safe in the United States because Joe Biden made it that way. So Joe Biden said, I'm making America not safe for Jews, so they have to go to Israel. He's like, Joe Biden's like committed to an ethno-state. He's committed. We've got to make an ethno-state. An ethno-state is the antithesis of democracy. But Joe Biden's committed to an ethno-state. How can the leader of a democratic nation be committed to an ethno-state, which is anti-democratic by definition? Well, because he has this crazy belief, this crazy cultist belief that 3,000 years ago, someone's deity promised a group of people this land, and in the meantime, thousands of years later, like they want to make good on it now. So yeah, Joe Biden makes sure that Joe Biden is working to make the United States not safe for Jews. So, like, I think the problem is that the old Democratic establishment is like not aware that there's this thing called the internet. And the internet allows people to get information not directly from them. They're used to having the old gatekeepers. The old gatekeepers meant you could only get your information from mainstream media, from if they reported it. Like, so if you didn't see it in the paper and you didn't see it on the evening news, it like didn't happen basically. And then the main newsmakers were the politicians, the president and the other newsmakers. So they're operating in the old world where they can control the narrative just by talking. Here's an example of Clinton.
I have had many conversations, as you have had, with a lot of young people over the last many months now. And you're right, they don't know very much at all about the history of the Middle East. So
basically, Hillary Clinton is saying, oh yeah, these kids, they don't know shit. They don't know the history. This genocide she's going to justify genocide by using history. What history, dude? What history justifies genocide? Are you saying that the Holocaust was justified because of history? Oh, we just don't know the history related to the Jewish people. Therefore, it's okay that the Nazis holocausted the Jews because we just didn't know the history. She's saying the same thing. She's using Nazi justification for a genocide by saying, "Oh, we just don't know the history. The genocide is justified because we don't know the history." And she's calling us stupid, and that might have worked. I mean, she's like. You see it all over the place, right? They're all over the place. They're trying to say that the anti-genocide protesters were anti-Semitic, that they hate Jewish people. But you already have these videos of like. But then you have videos.
I am a Holocaust survivor. I do not deserve applause. I am here because I experienced as a child every single thing that a child is experiencing on a daily basis, including the loss of my family, including war, firebombing, and you name it. It pleases me to no end to see that you are here. I take courage and inspiration from you to keep going. I'm 88 years old. I am a civil rights activist. When I came to America as an almost 17-year-old in New York City, I discovered America. I discovered the racism, and I became an activist against war, justice, and I'm here as a peace activist. We need to bring this to an end. There is no excuse for the slaughter of 15,000 children and untold others. We have to act with peace and love. And I am proud to be here with you, and I hope you will continue. We are on the side of justice and peace.
So Joe Biden and the establishment are trying to say that this Holocaust survivor is an anti-Semite. Because they're used to the old ways where we didn't have access to information if it didn't come from the mainstream gatekeepers. But you can see for yourself, right? Through first-hand reporting. Like, people have a recording studio in the palm of their hands now. So we don't have to listen to the news. We can look for ourselves and be like, oh, look, Joe Biden was lying. Eric Adams was lying. Hillary Clinton's lying. These people are lying.
And what you just heard from the Secretary of State who defended the report, the fact that there was no definitive conclusion drawn, he also said he has not seen a definitive plan from Israel to go into Rafah without mitigating civilian casualties. What was your takeaway, Senator?
What?
Well, Kristen, I have a lot of respect for Tony Blinken. He has an impossibly difficult job. But the reality is I think any objective observer knows Israel has broken international law. It has broken American law. And in my view, Israel should not be receiving another nickel in U.S. military aid. Look, the facts are quite clear. Hamas is a terrible, disgusting terrorist organization that began this war. But what Israel has done over the last 7 months is not just gone to war against Hamas, it has gone to war against the entire Palestinian people, and the results have been absolutely catastrophic. I mean, Kristen, we're talking about not just 35,000 Palestinians dead and 77,000 wounded, 2/3 of whom are women and children. That is not the way you conduct a war in a civilized society to the degree that war is civilized. We're talking about 60% of the housing in Gaza having been destroyed. The civilian infrastructure, that's water, that is raw sewage now running out into the streets, no electricity. You are talking about a systematic destruction of the healthcare system there. Every university in Gaza has been bombed. And right now, most frighteningly, according to the humanitarian organizations, we are looking at the likelihood of hundreds of thousands of children facing starvation. The Foreign Assistance Act is very, very clear, 6201, the provision. Any entity, any state, any country that blocks U.S. humanitarian aid is in violation of law and should not continue to receive military aid from the United States. That is precisely what Israel has done.
So, remember, Joe Biden is saying that Bernie Sanders is an anti-Semite. The U.S. House of Representatives, with bipartisan support, passed a law saying any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. So they're basically saying loyalty to Israel is more important to Jewish identity than being Jewish. Like, it's absurd, right? It breaks your head. Like, it's not at all rational. But Zionism isn't a rational idea. Genocide isn't rational. It's insanity. We're living through insanity right now. So I know a lot of people want to say, "Oh, it's just those college kids that are getting arrested." Right? Nah, here's the No.
I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do for you right now?
Yes, can you call the philosophy department office and tell them I've been requested?
Philosophy department?
Yes, call the philosophy department office.
I will. What's your...
I'm chair of the philosophy department.
I got you.
President-elect.
I got you.
So basically, yeah, the chair of the philosophy department got arrested. That's not a kid. That's faculty. That's faculty at the university. They arrest their own faculty if they're not loyal to Israel. Here's Annalise. Yeah, I already got Annalise Orlek. Here's Caroline Folin arrested for the same another faculty member. Another faculty member. What are you doing?
Get on the ground! I said,
Look at that. Holy shit.
oh my God! Give me some cops!
That's more faculty getting arrested. For what? For what? For insufficient loyalty to Israel. That's why she's being arrested. She wasn't loyal enough to Israel. To a foreign country. That's not a kid. That's faculty. That's people who work for the university. The university administration arrested its own faculty for insufficient loyalty to Israel. So remember, the goal of Israel is not to release the hostages. That's just something they say to give themselves cover. What they were really interested in is taking the land. Remember, Israel's war has gotten their war managed to kill 3 of the hostages. These guys were like blindfolded and waving a white flag, and they got murdered by the Israeli attack forces. So he's not like the hostages are just a cover in order for Netanyahu to continue the genocide. So Hamas accepts Gaza ceasefire. Israel says it will continue talks but presses on with Rafah attacks. So because they're not interested, they're not really interested in it. Israel doesn't really care about the hostages. They're using the hostages as cover to attack. Egyptian officials said, go back. Damn it. Egyptian officials said that proposal called for a ceasefire of multiple stages, starting with a limited hostage release and partial Israeli troop pullbacks within Gaza. The two sides would also negotiate a permanent calm that would lead to a full hostage release and greater Israeli withdrawal out of the territory, they said. Hamas sought clear guarantees for its key demand of an end to the war and to complete Israeli withdrawal in return for the release of all hostages, but it wasn't clear if any changes were made. Israeli leaders have repeatedly rejected that trade-off, vowing to keep up their campaign until Hamas is destroyed after its October 7th attack on Israel that triggered the war. Like, do you think Hamas is even in Gaza right now? Like, they're probably gone. What's there are a bunch of Palestinians who couldn't get out of the way and are getting murdered. They're not killing Hamas, they're killing kids. Biden says Gaza ceasefire is possible tomorrow if Hamas frees hostages. So Biden says, you know what, Hamas, you can't make a deal with Israel. You just have to give up completely. Just give up completely. And maybe Israel will stop the genocide. But Hamas offered to, right? Hamas said, all right, we'll give you the hostages. And Biden says, if you just give us the hostages, okay, we'll give you the hostages, but you have to stop the war. Why don't you give us the hostages? Because you won't stop the war. You won't stop the genocide. No doubt, not Netanyahu preventing hostage deal, charges ex-spokesman of Families Forum. Haim Rubinstein claims Israel rejected early Hamas offer to free all civilians if Israeli attack force didn't enter Gaza. Lays out Prime Minister's alleged political meddling that led him to quit last month. What was the atmosphere like? We left the meeting very disappointed because Netanyahu talked about dismantling Hamas as the goal of the war. He didn't promise anything regarding the demand to return the hostages. He merely said that a military operation in Gaza was needed to serve as leverage for the hostages' release. We later found out that Hamas had offered on October 9th or 10th to release all the civilian hostages in exchange for the IDF not entering the Strip, but the government rejected the offer. So Biden's lying. Biden's giving cover to the genocide. Did Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot support your effort, or were they not active on that front? 5 days after the war began, the centrist opposition National Unity Party joined the emergency government with its leader Gantz getting a spot on the 3-member war cabinet, and MK Eisenkot became an observer in the key decision-making panel. Both Gantz and Eisenkot are former Israeli attack force chiefs of staff. We worked with them all the time. Anytime we wanted to meet with them, they agreed. They pressured Netanyahu to make a deal, but Netanyahu sidelined them. The families are still asking Gantz not to leave the government, as many government critics have increasingly been urging them to do. So, they're not really in... The Netanyahu government isn't really interested in saving the hostages. They're more interested in using the hostages as an excuse to keep the genocide going, because they want all the land. And remember, they want to make conditions so bad that the Palestinians voluntarily leave. And the way they do that is that they deny aid and food and infrastructure and safety, and they completely bomb the Palestinian refugee camps. So you have to wonder, why is Biden willing? I mean, like, if Biden keeps this up, he's going to lose the presidency. So you got to ask yourself, why is Biden so committed to genocide that he would give up? And like they point to Donald Trump, saying, look how bad Donald Trump is. Yeah, right? You're willing to give give up American democracy. Joe Biden is willing to give up American democracy and hand it off to Donald Trump in order to continue a genocide. That's how committed of a Zionist Joe Biden is. He's willing to sacrifice American democracy, his own country, in order to make sure that the genocide continues. Why would Joe Biden do that? Can we trust Joe Biden if he's willing to sacrifice the country for the genocide of the Palestinian people? Like, why would he do that? I don't understand it. It makes no sense. Joe Biden is willing to hand the country to Donald Trump, a criminal and a traitor. Joe Biden's fully willing to say, all right, like, so fine, American people, if you don't want to go along with the genocide, I'll just give the country to Donald Trump. That's pretty fucked up, Joe Biden. Hamas hostage deal far from meeting our requirements, Netanyahu says. Hamas's decision to put new proposal on the table Monday night was intended to halt the Israeli attack force entries into Rafah, Netanyahu said. Of course, right? Biden said don't enter it, but you said fuck you, Biden, and Biden's like okay, Netanyahu. So it's like, why is Biden so timid? What's that word? Submissive. Why is Biden so submissive to Netanyahu? Netanyahu is a fascist. Netanyahu works with Donald Trump to thwart democracy. Why is, like, the only reason why I can think that Biden would be so submissive to Netanyahu is that Biden really isn't, like, opposed to the genocide, and he's not. He's a Zionist. Which is like a mental illness. Zionism is a mental illness. You're crazy if you're a Zionist. Like, an ethno-state is evil. It's wrong. So if you're believe in ethno-state, like the Confederates also believe in ethno-state, and they're crazy too. Afrikaners believed in ethno-state, and they were crazy. Why did Joe Biden know that Afrikaners were crazy, but he doesn't understand that Zionists are crazy? Why is that? Hamas official Osama Hadman warned in a press conference in Beirut that if Israel's military aggression continues in Rafah, there will be no ceasefire deal. We affirm that the military operation in Rafah, if carried out by Israel, will not be a picnic for the Israeli army. The ball is in Netanyahu's court, he added, saying the latest ceasefire proposal, which Hamas agreed to, represents the minimum that responds to the demands of our people and our resistance. At the issue has been a three-phase deal stretched out over 120 days, 4 months, that would see the return of all 132 remaining hostages. Of them, Israel has tallied 38 killed hostages. 33 of the 132 are expected to be freed in the first phase. The revised version of the deal pushes back the date by which all hostages would be freed and slows the pace of the releases. It also backs away from the commitment to ensure that all 33 of the hostages freed in the first place, women, elderly, and infirmed, would be alive, casting doubt as to whether Hamas has 33 hostages in this category that are indeed alive. Yeah, it's hard to keep people alive when they're getting bombed, right? The agreement Hamas proposed also clarifies that the war would end and that the Israeli attack force would have to withdraw from Gaza. KAN News reported that an Israeli official blamed mediator countries Egypt and Qatar, as well as the United States, for the negative change in the latest draft proposal, which caught what's Jerusalem have to do with it? That's a UN city. Oh, that's right. They just annexed it. Israel just annexed Jerusalem. Isn't that weird? So you can see, like, yeah, Israel's all about the annexation of Palestine. That's all they're interested in. They're not actually interested in peace. They're interested in annexing the land from Palestine. So they're not going to make a deal. The only way that Israel stops is if the United States stops supplying them with arms. And Biden is not going to do that. Biden's fully committed to Zionism. And he's willing to give the United States to Donald Trump in order to make sure that Zionism prevails. So in a lot of ways, the Israeli apartheid government is very similar to the American government. We talk as if this is going on in a foreign country, that all this stuff is happening over there in Palestine. All these killings and fascist mechanisms of Israel are just going on the other side of the world. But understand that they happen here. They're happening in the United States. I mean, you just saw a bunch of history professors and philosophy professors get arrested for lack of sufficient support for Israel. Like, oh, you don't support Israel? You're under arrest. Well, that's one part. But remember, black people, black Americans are still living with the repercussions of chattel slavery. Like, the United States is built upon slavery. And which is, slavery is basically another form of is a kind of apartheid. So the United States is built upon apartheid. Its history has a history of apartheid that it has never fully reckoned with. So here, let me give you an example. Robert Fortson, 21 years old, in his own house. A cop comes by, bangs on the door, demanding to be let in. He has no idea what's going on. Robert Fortson has a legal right to carry a weapon, especially when in his own home, right? He has a legal right to do this. So Robert Fortson answers the door holding a pistol. And immediately, not more than 1 second, as he opens the door, the cop murders him. Immediately. Is the guy pointing the gun at him? No. The cop immediately murders the guy as soon as he opens his door of his own house. So what that tells you is that black people, for all those Second Amendment people saying, "Oh, right to bear arms," it's a racist idea, because black people don't have that right. They don't have a right to bear arms. Cops will kill you in your own home. So what this teaches us is that if if someone bangs on your door and says they're a cop, don't answer the door. Because that cop is there to kill you. Cops are there to kill you. He had every right to have a gun. It's his own home. And that's the law in Florida. He had every right to have a gun. And yet, but fundamentally, the United States is an apartheid state. And on paper, that guy Robert Fortson had the right to have a gun, but de facto, in reality, in actuality, no, they don't. They get murdered. Remember Philando Castile? The guy who was sitting in a car. He was a passenger in the car. And he told the cop, hey, I have a gun. And the cop freaked out and murdered him in his own car. And she got away with it. So no, black people don't have a right to own a firearm. They don't have a right to carry a firearm. Because even though the law says they're allowed to, the reality is they don't. They'll get murdered by the police. Police will come to your home and murder you. You're not, black people, what they're telling you is that black people aren't safe anywhere. That's exactly the kind of society that Israel wants to create for Palestinian people. That Palestinians are not safe anywhere. Anywhere in Palestine, they will be bombed and attacked and killed. And Joe Biden's fully on board with it. Completely on board with it. Because he's a Zionist. Joe Biden said, I have this mental illness called Zionism that says that I must create an ethno-state. And ethno-states, by definition, are anti-democratic. And Joe Biden is willing to give up the country, give up democracy in the United States, so that he can create an ethno-state in Israel. The narrative, what they're trying to do is blame the people. Oh, you people are it's your fault if we go if Donald Trump takes power. As if the people control Biden's policy. Remember, the people in the United States are opposed to the genocide and want a ceasefire. But the Biden administration is ignoring the will of the people in order to create an ethno-state. So trying to blame the people for what the Biden administration is doing is just a deflection. Joe Biden is the one willing to hand the country over to Donald Trump just so he can have an ethno-state. Alright, so real quick, I want to go back over Donald Trump. Because, we all know, oh, man. Yeah, Biden's terrible. Biden's a genocider. Alright. But Donald Trump is way worse. I wouldn't even say worse. He's just a different kind of bad. So, back in 2016, Donald Trump asked for help from Russia to steal the 2016 election. And now in 2024, maybe people are forgetting what happened. So I want to just go over that real quick.
It strikes me there is a detail in your book, Where the Law Ends Inside the Mueller Investigation, that has received too little attention against the backdrop of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And that is that Paul Manafort, who you were responsible for prosecuting, met with a top Putin ally, Konstantin Kilimnik, and agreed to a deal that would essentially have enabled Putin to take control of the eastern part of Ukraine with Trump's approval. And Manafort had implicitly agreed to this. Why has this not gotten more attention against the backdrop of the invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin?
So I don't know why it has not gotten more attention, but I had the exact same reaction when the war occurred and you saw what Russia was trying to do. I was like, yes, of course. We had in writing, we'd sort of captured some emails between Konstantin Kilimnik and Paul Manafort talking about this deal and saying what they needed to make this work was a wink from Donald Trump that this would happen. But take Trump out.
Okay. They needed, so Paul Manafort, understand what happened. Paul Manafort was working for, dude, here, let me pull this up. This is from Heather Richardson, historian Heather Richardson. Shot. Although few Americans paid much attention at the time, the events of February 18th, 2014 in Ukraine would turn out to be a linchpin in how the United States ended up where it is a decade later. On that day, 10 years ago, after months of what started as peaceful protests, Ukrainians occupied government buildings and marched on parliament to remove Russian-backed President Viktor Yanukovych from office. After the escalating violence resulted in many civilian casualties, Yanukovych fled to Russia, and the Maidan Revolution, also known as the Revolution of Dignity, returned power to the Ukrainian constitution. The ouster of Yanukovych meant that American political consultant Paul Manafort was out of a job. Manafort had worked with Yanukovych since 2004. In that year, the Russian-backed politician appeared to have won the presidency of Ukraine. But Yanukovych was rumored to have ties to organized crime, and the election was full of fraud, including the poisoning of a key rival who wanted to break ties with Russia and align Ukraine with Europe. The US government and other international observers did not recognize the election results, while Russia's President Vladimir Putin congratulated Yanukovych even before results were officially counted or announced. The government voided the election and called for a do-over. To rehabilitate his reputation, Yanukovych turned to Manafort, who was already working for a young Russian billionaire, Oleg Deripaska. Deripaska worried that Ukraine would break free of Russian influence and was eager to prove useful to Vladimir Putin. At the time, Putin was trying to consolidate power in Russia, where oligarchs were monopolizing formerly publicly held industries and replacing the region's communist leaders. In 2004, American journalist Paul Klebnikov, the chief editor of Forbes in Russia, was murdered as he tried to call attention to what the oligarchs were doing. So essentially, what happened was Russia's fledgling democracy collapsed. At the end of, like, they tried, the communism in the USSR collapsed. Everything collapsed, and they tried to do democracy. But what ended up happening was the oligarchs, the the richest people in Russia, took control of a bunch of the industries in Russia, and they were the ones with power, right? Because they controlled the industries. So here's Vladimir Putin. He's trying to come back. He's trying to, like, reconstitute the USSR. So he needs to get these oligarchs. So right now, at that point, Vladimir Putin was working for the oligarchs. If the oligarchs needed something, they'd call Vladimir Putin and say, hey, Vladimir Putin, we need this done. And Vladimir Putin would say, okay, boss. And Vladimir Putin would go out and do the dirty work for the oligarchs. But underneath, Vladimir Putin was slowly consolidating power to flip it, right? He wanted to flip the power structure. And it got to a point where Vladimir Putin had enough of the government under his control that he could do it. So at one point, he picked one of the Russian oligarchs, an oil tycoon, and made up a bunch of bullshit charges against him, and then did a kangaroo court, and then had the guy killed. Vladimir Putin killed the Russian oligarch. So suddenly, instead of the oligarchs giving Putin orders, all of a sudden oligarchs realized, oh shit, we don't have the power anymore. We can get murdered by this Putin guy anytime. So it all changed, right? It all changed. Suddenly, the oligarchs weren't calling Putin to tell him to do stuff for him, and it was the other way around. The oligarchs were calling Putin to ask him what he needed done so they wouldn't get murdered by Putin. That was the whole point. That was the whole thing. So, okay, so understand that Oleg Deripaska was trying to find ways to curry favor with Vladimir Putin so that he wouldn't get murdered. And Manafort was working for Oleg Deripaska. And Manafort's job was to make sure that Ukraine had a government that would link Ukraine back with Russia. But the people of Ukraine didn't want that to happen. They wanted their freedom. So they staged a revolution and they forced out the Russian puppet, Yanukovych. But that meant, since the Russian puppet got kicked out, now Manafort doesn't have a job. Now Manafort's indebted to a Russian oligarch. So he's like, oh shit, if I don't pay off this Russian oligarch, I'm going to die. So Manafort needed to find a way to make himself okay with this Russian oligarch. So with Manafort's help, Yanukovych finally won the presidency in 2010 and began to turn Ukraine toward Russia. In November 2013, Yanukovych suddenly reversed Ukraine's course toward cooperation with the European Union, refusing to sign a trade agreement, and instead taking a $3 billion loan from Russia. Ukrainian students protested the decision, and the anger spread quickly. In 2014, after months of popular protests, Ukrainians ousted Yanukovych from power and he fled to Russia. So remember, now Yanukovych is out of a job, or now he's out of a job. Manafort's out of a job. Manafort, who had borrowed money from Deripaska and still owed him about $17 million, had lost his main source of income. Shortly after Yanukovych's ouster, Russia invaded Ukraine's Crimea and annexed it, prompting the United States and the European Union to impose economic sanctions on Russia itself and also on specific Russian businesses and oligarchs, prohibiting them from doing business in U.S. territories. These sanctions were intended to weaken Russia and froze the assets of key Russian oligarchs. By 2016, Manafort's longtime friend and business partner, Roger Stone, they had both worked on Richard Nixon's 1972 campaign, was advising Trump's floundering presidential campaign, and Manafort was happy to step in to help remake it. He did not take a salary, but reached out to Deripaska through one of his Ukrainian business partners, Konstantin Klimnik, immediately after landing the job, asking them, how do we use to get hold? I don't know, what's that mean? Has Deripaska operation seen? Like, have they seen what Manafort's doing? Manafort's trying to make good with this Russian oligarch by helping out Donald Trump for free. Manafort began as an advisor to the Trump campaign in March 2016 and became the chairman of his campaign in late June. Thanks to journalist Jim Ruttenberg, who pulled together testimony given both to the Mueller investigation and the Republican-dominated Senate Intelligence Committee, transcripts from the impeachment hearings, and recent memoirs, we now know that in 2016, Russian operatives presented Manafort a plan for the creation of an autonomous republic in Ukraine's east, giving Putin effective control of the country's industrial heartland, where Kremlin-armed and funded and directed separatists were waging a 2-year-old shadow war that had left nearly 10,000 dead. In exchange for weakening NATO, undermining the U.S. stance in favor of Ukraine in its attempt to throw off the Russians who had invaded in 2014, and removing U.S. sanctions from Russian entities, Russian operatives were willing to help Trump win the White House. The Republican-dominated Senate Intelligence Committee in 2020 established that Manafort's Ukrainian business partner, Klimnik, who it described as a Russian intelligence officer, acted as a liaison between Manafort and Deripaska, while Manafort ran Trump's campaign. Now, 10 years later, Putin has invaded Ukraine in an effort that, when it began, looked much like the one his operatives suggested to Manafort in 2016. Trump had said he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to NATO allies that don't commit 2% of their gross domestic product to the militaries. And Trump MAGA Republicans are refusing to pass a measure to support Ukraine in its effort to throw off the Russian invasion. The day after the violence of February 18th, 2014 in Ukraine, then Vice President Joe Biden called Yanukovych to express grave concerns regarding the crisis on the streets and urged him to pull back government forces and to exercise maximum restraint. 10 years later, Russia has been at war with Ukraine for nearly 2 years and has just regained control of the key town of Avdiivka because Ukrainian troops lack ammunition. President Joe Biden is warning MAGA Republicans that the failure to support Ukraine at this critical moment will never be forgotten. History is watching. So understand that Paul Manafort was the liaison, was Trump's liaison to Vladimir Putin, and their plan was, in exchange for Donald Trump stopping U.S. aid to Ukraine, essentially giving Ukraine to Putin, Putin would help Donald Trump take power. That was the deal. And remember, so this is what they're talking about.
It strikes me there is a detail in Trump's approval for Putin.
So I don't know why it has not gotten more attention, but I had the exact same reaction when the war occurred and you saw what Russia was trying to do. I was like, yes, of course. We had in writing, we'd sort of captured some emails between Konstantin Kilimnik and Paul Manafort talking about this deal and saying what they needed to make this work was a wink from Donald Trump.
All right, what's that wink he's talking about? So in order for this to happen, they needed a signal from Donald Trump that showed that Donald Trump was in agreement. What is that wink? Hey, I have it right here. I had it right here. Where'd it go? Right there.
The C-SPAN networks bring you long-form public affairs programming
with Putin, for I have nothing to do.
C-SPAN, created by cable.
Remember, Donald Trump had to give a signal to Vladimir Putin that he was agreeing to the deal. The deal was, in exchange for Vladimir Putin's help to win the 2016 elections, Donald Trump would give Vladimir Putin Ukraine by cutting off aid to Ukraine. That was, but they need a wink.
What do I have to get involved with Putin for? I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him. I don't know anything about him other than he will respect me. He doesn't respect our president.
That's all lies.
And if it is Russia, which is probably not, nobody knows who it is, but if it is Russia, it's really bad for a different reason, because it shows how little respect they have for our country when they would hack into a major party and get everything.
What's this have to do with respect, dude? Of course they don't respect the United States. Russia's our enemy. Why would you want them to respect us? Like, we're the exact opposite of them. Like, that's what I don't like. Donald Trump was saying, yeah, Russia doesn't like us. No shit, Sherlock. What the fuck's wrong with you? But this is Donald Trump talking smack because he's just. But remember, he needs to give a wink. He needs to wink to the Russian government to say that he's on board with their plan. They've already. Konstantin Kilimnik and Paul Manafort already did the exchange, and the deal was, all right, guys, if Donald Trump agrees to this, he needs to show that to give up Ukraine and exchange Russia will help. We need a wink from him.
But it would be interesting to see. I will tell you this: Russia.
Here it is. Here's where he's talking to Russia. Here's the wink. Here's the wink. Look how he looks directly at the camera. Every other time, he's looking at the reporters. But now, he's looking at the camera. Now he's looking, because he's not talking to the reporters, he's talking to Russia. So look at it. He's looking at the reporters.
But if it is Russia,
he's looking at the reporters.
It's really bad for a different reason. Because it shows how little respect they have for our country when they would hack into a major party and get everything.
Now the wink. Now the wink comes.
But it would be interesting to see. I will tell you this.
Watch, here comes.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
So he added by our press at the end, just to throw it off, right? Because The entire time he was talking to Russia. Did you hear that? The entire time he was talking to Russia. So he's saying, so that's the wink that Russia needed. That was the thing that Russia needed in order to signal. And he said, if you help me, I will reward you greatly. I will reward you mightily. So the United States is in a kind of bad position. Because on one hand, we have this fascist government invading a people and killing them. And on the other hand, we have Russia also invading a fascist country, also invading another country, Ukraine, and killing them. So two examples of this. Israel is invading Palestine and just killing mad people. And Russia is invading Ukraine and killing a bunch of people. And the thing is that the United States is saying, oh, it's bad for Russia, to this fascist country, to invade a sovereign nation and kill a bunch of people and a bunch of innocent civilians. It's wrong for them to do that. And on the other hand, we're saying, oh, but it's okay for this fascist government to invade this country and kill a bunch of innocent people. You see how that doesn't work? Like, the United States has undermined itself by supporting the Israel's genocide. The same values that should protect Ukrainians ought to protect the Palestinian people. But for some reason it's not, according to Joe Biden. Joe Biden says it's okay to genocide the Palestinian people, but it's not okay to genocide the Ukrainian people. How does that work? It only works if you're crazy, and Zionism is insane. Zionism is literally insane. I mean, when your whole deal is based upon the word of your deity from 3,000 years ago to an entirely group of different people, and doesn't take into account that for thousands of years afterwards, like, you didn't live there. Like, that's crazy. That's just crazy talk. Because if you agree to that, then what's wrong with Russia saying, oh yeah, we used to control Ukraine. Historically, we used to control Ukraine. So both of them, Israel and Russia, are using the same logic. That, oh, we used to control this territory, therefore it gives us the right to murder everyone on there right now. They're using the same logic. Why are they treated differently? And remember, Joe Biden is willing to give the country to Donald Trump in order to genocide the Palestinian people. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not at all like the only way I can make sense of it is if I think that Joe Biden is a white supremacist. Because the Palestinian people aren't white. In the settler colonial system, whereas the Ukrainian people are white. But even if they're white, the Republicans are willing to sacrifice the Ukrainian people in order to gain power. See, whiteness isn't like, whiteness is arbitrary. It's not a real thing. Whiteness is like whatever the power says it is. Whiteness is an artifact of settler colonialism. It's a way to justify atrocities toward another group of people by saying that they're either white or not white. And the only way to determine if you're white or not white is whatever the power says. And it can be revoked at any time. Your whiteness can be revoked at any time. That's the only way I can figure it out, that Joe Biden is a white supremacist. And the only distinction between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is that where they draw the line of whiteness. To Joe Biden, Ukrainians are white, but to Donald Trump, Ukrainians are not white. That's the only way it makes sense. Because they're both fascist regimes. They're both invading another country. They're both committing genocide. The only difference is how white are the victims. And remember, the United States is a settler colonial nation. Based upon slavery and genocide. It founded upon slavery and genocide. Sure, freedom for white men to do whatever they want, but for everyone else, slavery and genocide. That's pretty shitty, right? It's pretty shitty. Because that's not what I was taught. I was taught that that the United States was built upon ideals and principles. But they're not being reflected by our government right now. And that's because they know that in a democracy, white supremacists can't hold power indefinitely. They're losing power in the democracy. If they held true to democracy, then white people would lose control of the country. And so in order to maintain control of the United States, they have to get rid of democracy. And but democracy is great. It's a fantastic thing. It's like the best hope for the freedom of all humans is democracy. But it's always being undermined by undemocratic forces who would lose power if the power were invested in the people instead of in the oligarchs or the king. That's why we have to fight for democracy. Not because of the Democrats or the Republicans, but because it's the best hope for humans. And there's all these factions trying to overthrow democracy. And they're not always clear. If you buy into one party or the other, you will lose sight of what's going on. Joe Biden is willing to give up the country to Donald Trump in order to perpetuate a genocide. To help. So if Joe Biden doesn't want to give up the country to Donald Trump, all he has to do is stop giving weapons to Israel. Stop helping Israelis commit genocide. That's all he has to do. But will he do it? No. No. He would rather give up the country than to stop the genocide. So is Joe Biden a good person? You'll say, oh, but look what Joe Biden did. He decriminalized marijuana. He canceled student debt. Why didn't they do that before? Why all of a sudden now? That's kind of weird, right? If the president could have done that at any time, why did the Democrats wait so long to do it? It's always the war on drugs has always been wrong. The prohibition of marijuana has always been wrong. Student debt has always been wrong. Why did Joe Biden wait the Democrats, right? Why did they wait so long to finally do anything about it when people have been screaming about it forever? Because he's cashing it in. He's trying to say, look guys, I'm a good guy. I'll give you stuff that I should have given you a long time ago. In order to cover up the fact that he's pro-genocide. If Joe Biden is serious about saving democracy, all he has to do is stop giving U.S. weapons to Israel. That's all he has to do. Stop giving them offensive weapons. Sure, you can give them rockets for their Iron Dome so that their people don't get bombed. That's fine, right? Iron Dome is not offensive weapons. But Joe Biden bypassed Congress to give Israel tank rounds so they can blow up Gaza City. So you can't really believe what Joe Biden says. The war would end tomorrow if Joe Biden would stop sending weapons to Israel. The war would end tomorrow. But Joe Biden is more interested in genocide than he is in American democracy. There would be a ceasefire tomorrow if Joe Biden stopped sending weapons to Israel. I don't know what you want me to say. Like, do you see the contradiction? How can one group of people, how can you say, oh, it's wrong for a fascist country to genocide these people over here, and say, oh, it's okay for a fascist country to genocide these people? How do you do that? How do you reconcile that? And the only way that this makes sense is if the people saying this are white supremacists, in the context of white supremacy. That's the only way. Which tells you that it's unjust. The people proposing that are unjust, saying that it's okay to genocide these people, but not these people. That's the insidious nature of white supremacy. And remember, Joe Biden is willing to give up the United States in order to perpetuate genocide against these people. The war would end tomorrow if Joe Biden stopped sending offensive weapons to Israel. But he's not willing to do that. Okay, that'll do it for me. Until next time, peace. Dogo Kiddo out.